American Adventure. The University of North Carolina presents American Adventure. Written by John Ehle, directed by John Clayton, American Adventure is produced and recorded by the Communications Center of the University of North Carolina. Earl Wynn, director. From time to time on these weekly NBC broadcasts, American Adventure will bring you stories about the birth and growth of this country, man's greatest adventure in time and space. Some of these stories will be about our American heroes, such as Cyrus Field, Thomas Wolfe. And next Thursday's program is about George Washington Carver. But tonight, there is a story about the Federal Lion. It is a true story, but none the more believable because of that. The Federal Lion was a gift of the Emperor of Morocco to President Andrew Jackson, and nobody knew what to do with him. Not even the consul at Tangiers, into whose keeping he first fell. It was no simple matter to inform the Department of State that the President of the United States now owned a lion.
Oh, no. I suppose this message won't do either. Here, let me have another piece of paper.
We're out of paper, sir.
Out?
I dispatched a young man to buy some more in the market.
Oh, but I prefer American paper.
You have used all the American paper writing this message, sir. I believe, to be exact, this is the 87th message you have written to the Secretary of State.
Yes, but do you see this printed form?
Yes, sir.
An order from the President himself to accept no gifts.
Yes, sir.
Now I have to write Washington and say I have accepted a gift on the President's behalf.
Yes, sir.
Well, at any rate, I must notify Washington.
Yes, sir.
This last message I wrote, step back over there and read it to me.
Yes, sir. Over here, sir?
Yes, that'll do.
Dear Mr. Secretary of
No,
State...
wait a minute. Let me sit down and lean back as if I'm Secretary Van Buren. Now, you're an aide, and we're going through the morning mail.
Yes, sir.
Let me get in the mood. I've just given some thought to the French situation.
Yes, sir.
And to the English merchant marine problems. And now you say this is a letter from the consul of Tangiers, aide?
Yes, Mr. Secretary.
Well, read it. Read it.
Yes, sir. It is addressed to the Secretary of State and says, I have the honor to tell you that the highest gift within the power of the Emperor of Morocco has been bestowed upon the President of the United States. I had no alternative but to accept it.
The President of the United States. I had no alternative but to accept this gift, which is a giant male lion named Mamoun Bashaw.
What? A lion?
Yes, Mr. Van Buren.
Go on.
The lion is something of a problem here at the consulate, as you can imagine. It is costing money to feed and care for the animal. And though I'm told he's a beautiful lion, you will understand, I'm sure, if I give my personal opinion, that his beauty hardly offsets other features which are not so attractive.
Here, Abe, let me see that.
Yes, Mr. Van Buren.
Why, this is amazing. That will be all for this time, thank you, Abe.
There are some other letters, sir, and reports from abroad.
Yes, later.
Shall I answer the consul at Paris, sir?
Oh, yes, we must get to that. But right now, I'd better do some thinking about this lion.
Do you consider it a serious problem, sir? I find it rather amusing.
So would I if I thought President Jackson would.
A lion?
Yes, Mr. President.
L-I-O-N?
Exactly. The very same, sir.
Oh, stop it, Van Buren. I've got no time for jokes.
And neither have I, Mr. Jackson. And this is no joke. He is a large male lion, and he's now owned by you.
I own no lion, sir.
He's a gift to you, Mr. President.
Well, I don't know what sort of game you're playing, Mr. Van Buren, but I'm not under any obligation to accept this lion, and I do not accept.
Yes, I see. Your attitude will, of course, endanger our relationship with the Emperor of Morocco.
Confound the Emperor of Morocco if this is his idea of a present.
But you realize that we have for some weeks been interested in a trade agreement with the Emperor?
Yes?
I hope that our Western aversion to lions will not come between yours and the Emperor's undying friendship, especially at this time.
Oh.
Your attitude could go a long way toward being disastrous, Mr. President.
Well, your attitude isn't exactly clear, Mr. Secretary. You act as if when I took the oath of office, I committed myself to accept whatever animal anybody in the world wanted to bestow upon me.
No, not quite anybody.
You act as if I should receive this lion as a favor.
Exactly, Mr. President, at the moment.
As if I should house this animal here in the president's house, or would you rather have me send it to the Hermitage in Tennessee?
I hope that we can keep our tempers on this, Mr. President.
Maybe we can establish a precedent with this lion. Maybe we can put him in one of the parlors here in the White House and so make it known to every emperor and bey and whatnot of the East that we would honor any gift of monkeys or elephants or tigers or anteaters which they may care to make. Perhaps this can be the start of a great national menagerie.
I believe that idea crossed the mind of our consul in Tangiers. At the close of his letter, he mentions it.
Well, he can reconsider, and so can you, Mr. Van Buren, and so can...
Mr. President, may I suggest, sir, that as in any case of difficult decision where precedent is not clearly established, that this matter be referred to the Congress.
Congress, huh?
Yes, Mr. President.
Sound idea. Take care of that, Mr. Van Buren. Send the matter to Congress.
But Congress was not to become entangled in this matter. They buried the problem quite deep in a convenient committee, and it was still there when they adjourned. Meanwhile, the consul at Tangiers awaited expectantly for spring, he and his household. And as soon as practical, the federal lion was put aboard the United States brig William Tell, which some weeks later put in at New York. The lion and 2 black Arabian horses, which the emperor also sent along, were transported noisily to Washington.
Gentlemen, I don't think we ought to take any more of this cabinet meeting to talk about that lion.
I'm afraid the emperor will be peeved, Mr. President, if his embassy here reports that the animal is being left in storage.
Well, where can we put it?
Oh, could you give it to somebody?
Oh, I might be able to get rid of it by attaching him to a post office appointment.
You can't give it to anybody, Mr. President.
What do you mean I can't?
First, it doesn't belong to you. You can't accept gifts without permission of Congress, or so the Constitution clearly says.
I know some members of Congress that'd jump at the chance to give me an African lion.
But until they do, it isn't yours.
Whose is it?
I haven't the slightest idea. Perhaps the Attorney General has an idea as to that.
Gentlemen, it is my opinion that Mamoon Bashaw is a lion without a country. Actually, I believe a case similar to this came up in Jefferson's administration.
What sort of animal did they give Jefferson?
Horses. Arabian horses.
Oh, they enclosed 2 of those for you, Mr. President, with the shipment of the lion.
What did Tom Jefferson do?
As I remember, he sold the animals and put the money in the treasury.
Sold them without consent of Congress?
As I remember, yes.
That was unconstitutional.
Oh, well, what's a horse or a lion?
Nothing is insignificant in politics. You know that, Van Buren.
Mr. President, when the framers of our great Constitution put in this clause that you couldn't accept gifts without the consent of Congress, they had no idea, not the slightest, that a president would ever be faced with a lion.
Of course not.
Now, obviously, the proper action is to dispose of these animals by the simplest and quietest way possible and deposit the money to the people's account.
Confound, I thought you just told me I don't own these animals.
You don't, legally.
I'm to sell them without owning them?
Well, so far as the Emperor of Morocco, who is probably the owner at this moment, so far as he is concerned, you own them.
And how is Congress concerned?
Well, not even George Washington was ever sure of that, Mr. President.
I won't touch it. I don't want to discuss it anymore. If I don't own that lion, I don't own him, and I don't want him.
But the Emperor of Morocco...
And that emperor had better keep quiet, Mr. Van Buren, or we'll not sign that pact he wants us to sign either.
It's we who want him to sign it, Mr. President.
Well, send this problem to Congress, Van Buren. Tell Congress this lion is a present to the American people from the Emperor of Morocco. And prompt action is necessary lest we hurt either of their royal feelings.
Gentlemen of the Senate's Committee on Agriculture, there's been a great deal of public comment about this lion, Mamoon Bashaw, and a couple of stud horses. This is not, or so it seems to me, one of our more important matters, so let's move right along. The House has passed a resolution authorizing the President to sell the lion and horses and put the money in the Treasury.
Mr. Chairman?
The Senator from New Jersey.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion which I will make before this meeting is adjourned to the effect that the lion should be presented to the proprietors of Peale's Museum in New York City, and the 2 horses should be given to some New York Agricultural Society.
Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from Louisiana.
Mr. Chairman, these animals are public property and as such belong to all the people. Certainly they shouldn't be given to New York, the richest state in the Union.
I agree with the gentleman.
How's that, Senator Moore?
I said Alabama agrees.
Mr. Chairman, New Jersey is perfectly willing to give the lion to Alabama or to Louisiana.
Mr. Chairman, under no circumstances will Alabama accept that line.
Then why do you object to giving it to New York?
But we will take those 2 horses.
Mr. Chairman.
I'd dearly love to have those 2 Arabian horses in Alabama.
So would we in New Jersey.
I wouldn't object to giving the lion to New Jersey Senator.
1 horse to Louisiana and 1 horse to Alabama. Perhaps we can swing that, Senator Moore.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator Poindexter of Mississippi.
Mr. Chairman, let's not argue over a lion. I feel that in the light of the recent refusal of a European government to pay the debt which they justly, rightfully, and obviously owe us, that we give this lion as a gift to Louis Philippe of France.
Hear, hear.
Is that in the form of a motion, Senator?
Let's give it to England. We haven't had a fight with England in quite a while.
Sergeant, would you close that door, please? Now, gentlemen, I think this is very funny, and of course I'm not trying to be an old fogey about this and object to humor, but we are senators, and this is the Senate's Committee on Agriculture, and we do have to give away or sell these animals.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator from Maine.
I wonder. Now, nobody jump me before I'm through. I wonder if the power of Congress, under the welfare clause of the Constitution, extends the gratuitous gifts of public property of the United States.
Surely, Senator, you know that question has been before the Senate and the American people for 15 years.
The age of the question is not what bothers me, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if the animals do not have to be sold, since they are certainly public property.
But, Senator...
Where in the Constitution do we find authority to give away public property?
Does anybody object to going along with the House resolution and have the President sell these animals?
What are you going to do with the money, Mr. Chairman?
Put it in the Treasury.
Don't know that that's constitutional to take public property and sell it to replenish the Treasury.
Well, that may be your opinion, Senator, but I...
Nothing in the Constitution would indicate that you can rob the public domain for temporary tax relief. If we need higher taxes, then let's vote on them.
Here again, gentlemen, we're digging up old arguments concerning government policy on public lands. This is a lion.
But we might set a precedent here.
I don't see that it matters much what sort of precedent we set as to getting rid of African lions.
What you can do with a lion, Mr. Chairman, you can do with public land.
I don't know what the gentleman's experience may be with public land, but he's certainly no authority on lions.
Well, it's my opinion that we can't sell this animal no matter what we do with the money.
Why not?
Well, on principle of common law. In order to legally dispose of property, one must first be able to hold it. And I don't see anyone here who could possibly hold this lion.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Clay.
How many motions are before this committee?
I think only one, Mr. Clay.
Well, then, let me suggest, rather than move, this compromise. That we sell the horses and give away the lion.
Yeah, that's the answer. Mr. Chairman, that will only ensure us of being either doubly wrong or half right.
Let's move to a vote.
First, to whom is this lion to be given? I think I voiced an opinion about giving federal property to any of the rich states of the Northeast.
Perhaps a western state would be a fitting compromise.
Who wants the lion?
Let's not worry about who wants the lion, gentlemen. Let's dismiss all this right now by putting it down that President Jackson is to dispose of the lion as he thinks best.
Excellent!
What do they mean as I think best? I don't think best about lions at all. Why couldn't Congress dispose of this lion?
There were some political considerations, Mr. President.
Well, of course there were, but...
And I suppose they preferred to direct you to handle the matter, sir.
And who is Congress to send out any such directive? I'm not subject to the whims of Congress every time some potentate gives this country a creature.
Yes, sir.
The men who wrote the Constitution had no intention of empowering Congress to tie up the executive branch so that I could not administer the orderly processes of government.
Yes, Mr. President. No.
Where is this lion?
I don't know, sir.
Who's feeding it?
I don't know, sir.
Well, somebody has to feed it.
Shall I notify the Secretary of Agriculture, sir?
No, you shall not, nor anybody else in the executive branch. It's up to the congressional committees to feed him, it seems to me.
Yes, sir.
What color is he?
I believe all lions are brown, sir.
You know, it's a funny thing. I pass a problem to Congress and Congress back to me. I wouldn't be surprised if that lion doesn't end up the property of the Supreme Court. My aide said you wanted to talk to me about this federal lion, Mrs. Bomford.
Yes, Mr. President.
Now, I may have misunderstood him, but I think he said you wanted the lion.
Yes, sir.
Now, go on with your story, if you will. I'll be happy to listen to you.
Well, Mr. President, I represent the City Orphan Asylum.
Yes?
And I was wondering if a lion wouldn't be just the thing for the children.
Well...
This would make us the only orphanage in the world, so far as I know, that owns a lion.
I wouldn't be surprised.
He would be an excellent diversion for the children.
Yes, that's
true. He's something we could share with the Catholic orphanage here, too.
Uh-huh.
He might serve to bring us closer together. There are few enough ties between the Protestants and the Catholics, don't you think?
I never make comments on questions like that, Mrs. Bomford.
Oh?
I'm a politician.
I see.
In fact, the minute you said Protestant and Catholic, I began to think. Now, would the Catholic orphanage feel slighted if I were to give this lion to you and not to them?
Why, I don't know whether they want a lion or not.
I see. Maybe we ought to look into that. I tell you what I could do. I could give this lion to the two orphanages, and then it could serve as a real tie between you, couldn't it?
I'm not sure, sir.
At least as much of a tie as any lion can be.
Yes, I suppose so.
And then I would be clear.
Clear, Mr. President?
In fact, perhaps we could do more with this gift than we're planning to, Mrs. Bomford, in a political way, I mean. How about a parade?
Sir?
Yes, I can see a parade very clearly in all this. We can get the Army and Navy to furnish some music. We can call out a regiment or so of troops, put that lion in his cage on a wagon, and put the kids from the two orphanages in two wagons or more, perhaps on hay, like in a hayride.
Mr. Jackson, what are you saying?
You'd love parades, and I could put a big sign on the side of that lion's cage. Mamoon Bashaw, gift of Andrew Jackson to Washington City Orphanage Protestant and St. Vincent Orphanage Catholic. Then we could roll that cage right past the Capitol as the senators come out, the band's playing, you know.
But, Mr. President, could anyone see the lion through the sign?
Well, I'm not trying to show the lion. I'm trying to show the sign.
Why, Mr. President?
Oh, politics, I suppose. Forget it, Mrs. Bomford. I'm just being a politician. I guess I ought to sit back down here and become president again. But I do love politics.
Don't you think, Mr. President, that politics makes us sort of comical sometimes?
Well, yes, I suppose.
It doesn't permit us to take our government seriously, does it?
Well, I tell you, ma'am, it tends to keep us from doing that, but I'm not so sure we ought to go around with the weight of government seen in the furrows of our brows. After all, this is a cumbersome system we've got here, and this or any democracy. All the checks and double checks and balances and passing around the problems.
Yes, but...
If we didn't smile sometimes, it might get to look stupid. Might start looking as if we needed a more simple system, one not so cumbersome.
Well, there's a little something to that, I suppose, Mr. President.
Might seem like we need a smooth operating absolute monarchy, which we don't want over here. Then I found that sometimes we laugh at what we're the fondest of. I've heard people laugh at our political confusion and muddiness, but it was an affectionate sort of laugh, as if to say, this is ours and we love it. Well, I'll be happy to give this lion to the 2 orphanages, Mrs. Bomford.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And then perhaps the United States government can get back to normal.
Just listen.
Yes, sir.
Oh, it's addressed to me, Consul Tangier.
Yes, sir.
Dear sir, we are pleased to notify you that the lion you accepted on the President's behalf some time ago has been disposed of in the most practical way possible. You are to be complimented on your initiative as displayed in this particular matter.
Excellent, sir.
But you are again reminded of the State Department rule to avoid accepting any gift, no matter how delicate the situation. Van Buren, Secretary of State.
Yes, sir.
I tell you, clerk, make a copy of this and file one under citation and the other under reprimand.
One might think that this is the end of the story of the federal lion, but not quite so, because President Jackson gave some more thought to the orphanage proposal.
Give a lion to some kids like that? What if one of them gets too close to him? What if he bites one of them? Kids can't play with lions. He's not a kitty cat, you know. Be terrible for the little kid. Be bad publicity, too. No, I think the thing to do is to sell him and then let the orphanages take the money and buy ponies or something else that kids can afford to fool around with. Kids could ride around on ponies all right. Orphanages ought to have some ponies around the place. Don't you think ponies would be better than a lion?
So President Jackson ordered the lion to be sold at auction. And Mamoun Bashaw was bought by the Boston Menagerie Company for the surprisingly high price of $3,350. But then one would expect a federal lion to have a high price, wouldn't he? But even this is not the end of the story.
A lion, John?
A lion. I bought that lion. See him out there in the court?
You bought a lion?
Not just a lion, honey. I bought that lion. Look at him. Look at that head on him. I own him, honey. We own him.
Why, John?
I'm going to put him on display here at the inn. In this cage, right out there. You see, people are already gathering. Now, you watch and see. A percentage of those people will be in here directly to talk about that lion, one to another and to me. See, they're talking now. Then one of them will say, why don't we continue our conversation over a mug of ale? Get out the mugs, honey.
But, John...
I'll have to put an ad in the papers, or perhaps he can advertise himself.
Yes.
The Fountain Inn has a lion. Come and see him and have a drink.
And so the federal lion became, in a sense, an assistant bartender, and undoubtedly lived a happy life in a world of beer, ale, wine, laughter, and song. And that's the end of the story. American Adventure is written by John Ehle, directed by John Clayton, produced by the Communication Center of the University of North Carolina. American Adventure is a study of man in the New World, his values and his characteristics, who he is, what he believes. The series is made possible by the National Association of Educational Broadcasters and the Fund for Adult Education, an independent agency established by the Ford Foundation. In The Federal Lion, John Ehle was Jackson, Fred Young was Secretary Van Buren, Charles Hadley was the consul at Tangiers, and Dorothy O'Sullivan was Mrs. Bomford. The entire cast was composed of students, faculty members, and townspeople of the University of North Carolina community. American Adventure is produced and recorded on the campus at Chapel Hill.
Next Thursday night, NBC invites you to hear a story about George Washington Carver on American Adventure.
This is the NBC Radio Network.